Today, we will be talking about self care, boundaries, and personal empowerment. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at AIWA Greater New York Affiliate monthly online events. Our online events are to bring inspiring and successful professionals of all trades to share their experience and empower you with the tools and techniques for you to be healthy, fit, creative, successful, confident, and be a high achiever. Our guest speaker today is Tanya Dove Arkelian. Tanya has enjoyed her career in software sales for at least last 20 years. She has worked at multiple high growth SaaS companies. SaaS stands for software for as services, including eBay, Tilium, Power Reviews, Segment, Yext, and Salesforce. Currently, Tanya is sales executive at LifeRamp Tech Company and a sales executive coach. She has received sales awards and recognition for achieving President's Clubs over the years, and more importantly, she has been rewarded for finding her voice and her confidence in sales as a woman. The sales journey inspired Tanya to publish two books. Work It Girl. This book is a modern day career guide for women in sales and a real truth bomb about what it takes to manage that career in such predominantly male dominated industry. The companion book to this is called Work It, a modern day sales planner, which is a daily planner for anyone looking for motivation, discipline, and energy needed to manage sales. Tanya delivers sales content, keynotes, and workshops like this to empower more women. She is passionate about helping other women to elevate their careers and their life. Tanya lives outside of Boston with her husband and two young boys and juggles all this beautifully. So, welcome, Tanya, and thank you for being our guest speaker today. I would like to start with the following question. Being in sales for so many years and having achieved so many great things, why self care? And what boundaries have?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am so happy to be here with you, lovely ladies. I love, before some of you joined, Anna said, we're going to have 1 hour of girl talk. And that's what I want for our time today. I just want all of us to be able to find a really safe place where we can talk and share and learn from each other, and just get better about managing our day and our life and all of the things that we have to do, because we are here today in this 4x6 Zoom box. And I think sometimes it looks very pretty in this box, but it's really messy in the world. And I've learned that the hard way. So I am here to really help just share tips and tools and tricks and ways that we can get better. And that's what these conversations are really all about. So I love, Anna, that you started with, because what the heck does software sales have to do with self-care? And I hope that this, helps a lot of you think about what you want to get out of the session based on how I answer this question. So I started in software about 20 some odd years ago. And when I started, it was literally by accident. So I grew up in a very traditional Armenian household here in Boston. And my parents worked really hard to raise the money to make sure that I was the first person in our family to get an education and get a college degree and do all of the right things. But at the end of that, their life dream for me was to get married and have babies and stay home and raise those babies. And so I had a little bit of this, complex really growing up, trying to understand how do you manage what your expectation is of your family, but also the expectation that you have for yourself to actually get out there and do a job that you realize you're quite good at, right? So my traditional training, my background is in marketing and entrepreneurship, but I accidentally landed a marketing job in a software company back in the late, I guess early 2000s is when it was. And it happened to be that I reported to a sales manager. So I was actually working on a sales team in a marketing function in my early 20s. And I started doing this job where truly I was just replying to RFPs and proposals and supporting the sales team and writing some of our marketing material. And after a couple of years, I got really bored, right? So I said, what do I do? What's next? And my sales manager tapped me on the shoulder and said, how about you try sales? And I thought, sales, I looked around me and everybody around me was, number one, a man. And number two, they were 20 to 30 years older than me. They were the sole breadwinner of their families, and they had stay-at-home wives and children, and they were supporting, their families. And so here I am, 20 something, and I've been given this opportunity and I don't really know what to do with it, but it sounded interesting enough. So I actually started my sales career in this type of environment. And I worked there for about 10 years and it was incredible. But I will tell you, that job led to another high growth SaaS software company, which then led to another. And what I realized is that every place that I went, I was always the only woman in the room. And now, by the way, I'm managing a new, relationship, and we get married and I have two babies and my, mids mama, and everybody's saying like, when are you going to stay home and stop traveling and raise your babies? And so I guess when you talk about self-care, for me, it comes from this place of, for the last 20 years, I think I've worked so hard to please everybody in every situation that I have ever been in, whether that's making sure that, because I'm working too much, I want to make sure I pack the lunch boxes and I'm home for breakfast and I'm home for dinner and I'm there for all the important things. But then I also want to be the perfect saleswoman, right? So I'm traveling and I'm visiting clients and I'm working late hours and I'm trying to keep the house clean and I'm trying to host parties, and we can't cater because that's not allowed, right? Like we have to home make everything. And so it became this constant push and pull of I was always doing too much. And I think that as women, sometimes we do too much. And I mean, that's just who we are, right? We can handle it. But what ends up happening in that process is you go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden you crash. And when you crash, it's really ugly. It's like really, really ugly. They call it the ugly cry. And when you have that ugly cry, you're never home in your pajamas with a nice big glass of wine. When you have that ugly cry, you're, at the gym and you fall apart, or you're traveling and you lose your, what in front of a client because something happens and you're just trying to figure out how to make it happen. And so self-care for me became really important because what I realized over the years is that I am a perfectionist and I do like doing things to that degree. But if you don't set the right foundation for yourself, if you don't have non-negotiables, if you don't have rules for yourself of the way that you like to follow the things that are priorities for you, everything will fall apart. So I think a lot of you would say, well, what does sales have to do with self-care? It's been a lot of trial and error, right? There have been many, many times where, early on in the day, like my kids, when they were little, now they're a little bit older, 11 and 14. But when they were little and I would be running calls and I was trying to be taken very seriously, and I have like a child asking if they can watch TV or have Oreos, I would literally just like, I joke, like I would drop kick them, like just go into the closet, like just go away. I'm trying to do this job. And so I think that takes a toll on you, I think, over the years, right? Because you want to try to sort of do the thing and be perfect in every scenario. And there's a price to pay for that. And so I don't know, just drop in the chat or, raise your hands, like, let me know. Do you guys resonate with what I'm saying? Am I coming from a different place? Like, how are we feeling? Do we all kind of feel the same struggle?
Let's be proactive. Yeah, I can raise two hands.
Two hands. Yeah. It's all the hands. So that's really what all this was all about, right? I think that's what ends up happening is it's really difficult for us to have this balance. And for me, I always set my own negotiables. What I realized over time is my three non-negotiables, which have a lot to do with just my overachieving personality, my prioritization of my health, et cetera. But if you ask me on any given day, what are your non-negotiables? For me, it's drink water, move your body, and be awesome. Those are the three things that I live my life around. And the first two truly have to do with get out and move and take care of your body and your health. But the third and the be awesome, it's not, look at me, I'm amazing, right? But the be awesome is really about all of the head talk that actually shows up in our head before we do anything else every day. And so how do you start to manage that talk that starts to bring you down? And so for me, the be awesome is I acknowledge all of the things that potentially I think are shortcomings of mine, or things that I have to work really hard at, or things that might be really, really, really challenging for me that day or that week. But it's a very deliberate decision that I make to say, let's actually move past that and get better despite that, because that challenge is here for me and there is something I have to learn from that. So this idea of creating these boundaries for yourself and having that self-care, I think, is so, so important. And the reason I sort of developed today's topic, which is more just productivity and productivity reboot, yes, it has a lot to do with my sales discipline, right? Like in my job, software sales, I have in this case, a $2 million number. I have to go out and sell the big, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, a big software contract that work with a couple of clients. And if you're lucky in a given year, you end up hitting this multi-million-dollar quota. And what that requires, though, is a daily discipline, right? I need to go out and find new prospects. I have to create a discipline around prospecting those customers, learning our demo, learning our technology, solution selling, problem solving. And sometimes it gets lonely and sometimes it gets really hard. So a lot of the methodologies or the processes that I kind of think about are things that have come from my own daily struggle, right? When I'm just really close to getting on a PIP, which is like something that's like, oh, you're not hitting your number. Like when I get to that struggle, or when you're like, oh my God, I haven't closed anything. Am I going to lose my job tomorrow? Right? Like these really difficult places where you're up against a wall. I'm like, okay, this is where you have to dig deep and find new ways to get creative and do the thing. That's where all of this sort of comes from for me. So that's the connection. It's a long way to answer your question, Anna, but it's a great foundation for. We'll just run through some of the structural ways that I think about creating these boundaries and priorities for ourselves. The one thing that I would ask all of you is we're all coming at this from a different perspective, right? We all have a different set of priorities or challenges or things that we have in our space right now as we think about what you want to get out of this session today. What I would say is be open-minded. And a lot of what I might say might be, oh yeah, I do this, or I know this, and that's okay. But try to open yourself up to one new idea or one way that you can empower yourself at the end of this hour. And if we can do that together, I think that's going to be a big win for all of us. So, I put this quote up here because I really love what it stands for when we think about competing priorities. I think sometimes as women, we are so hard on ourselves and we want to do so much and we want to accomplish so much. But the reality, I think, is that when we are so spread thin that way, sometimes we end up just paralyzing ourselves because we want to do so much and we just don't know where to start. And I think that that's a very dangerous place to be, because I can tell you just from my sales pipeline and my process that I engage in, sometimes when I'm very close to panic because I can't get to my number or I don't know how I'm going to get there, the thing that ends up happening to me is that I get so overwhelmed. I think about all the things I need to do. And truthfully, I end up doing nothing productive. But when I really start to take a mindset that, you know what, I'm going to be kinder to myself. I'm not going to stress on the way things used to be, but I'm going to come up with a very reasonable plan on how to take baby steps to improve my process. When I tell you the magical things that have happened for me, it has been life-changing. It's been so transformative to the point where I truly believe that is why I've seen a lot of my success in terms of having the strength, the energy, the courage to write my 2 books, to launch my business, to create a business and a practice where I can be a one-on-one coach to a lot of other women and juggle all of this while I do my full-time job, while I have, all of my responsibilities at home and out of the home, and taking care of myself, just, mentally, physically, spiritually. It's a lot of work, but it's because I'm very kind to myself in the process, right? So I encourage all of us to think about it from that perspective. And this is not the prioritization that I'm talking about. So, this is a great example of, yep, I want to be productive today. And then we go off and we're like Googling and we're just, having a hard time. We want to know what's on Netflix. We want to know, we got an email that our favorite brand is on sale. And now all of a sudden we're on a rabbit hole on a shopping spree, or, we get distracted researching summer camp for our kids. Like, this is not the productivity. That's a whole different topic. What we're talking about right now is overachieving women that I'm staring at here on this Zoom, who literally have real priorities in their life, things that they cannot ignore. And they are managing things like their children, their careers, their responsibilities, aging parents, right? Like all of the things that are really real, our health. Anna and I were talking about a client that she had who needs to take care of her back health, her actual physical health, right? Where if she throws her back out, she's done. She can't do anything else, but she's not taking care of herself, right? So what I want to know in the chat is if you're comfortable just sharing some of the things, and I'm putting up examples here, but some of the things that are priorities for you that end up just getting lost in the shuffle. I'm going to ask you to just dig deep and really be honest with yourself with no judgment. What are maybe some of the things that you're either crushing or things that maybe you're not, that really just need to have a space today so that we can shine a light on it? And you can really think about, how am I prioritizing this thing or this set of things in my life? Well, and I think the reality too is that when we start to really shine light on these things, you start to realize the reason why I'm in that mindless scroll is maybe because I just don't have a plan to get to my goal, right? I just don't know what to do, and it's easier to do nothing. And that's part of the problem sometimes because we juggle so much. I think that when you are faced in a situation where it is the thing you have to do, or there is a massive consequence, that's when you take action, right? If there is a massive consequence, so I'm not prioritizing my health and I throw my back out, or I'm not prioritizing my health and now I go to the doctor and I have high blood pressure and right, my numbers don't look right, or I'm not prioritizing my pipeline and I go into my next meeting with my manager and I'm not going to hit my number and now I'm panicking about losing my job. Like, there are things that actually start to have massive consequences. And that's when you say, oh, shoot, like I really have to figure out how to come up with this plan to right the ship. And I think sometimes that is just too late. But I'll be honest with you, that's where some of my best thinking has come from, right? When you're in this panicked state and you're trying to figure out, how do I get myself out of this? Let me tell you what happens, because a magical thing happens in that moment is, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but like you start to give no F's. I call this like you give no F's, like you don't give a about what's going on, because at that point you have no fear, right? Because the consequence of doing nothing is so much bigger that all of a sudden you decide that you will go out and do anything to make your goal happen. So I think it's okay sometimes for us to get to a place where we are, panicking and we're up against a wall and we have big consequences. Because I will tell you, like, this is the reason why I feel I'm so good at my job. I've had those moments where I've had that difficult conversation with my boss and I didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like. And I remember going into the room saying, well, I've tried everything to get a meeting with CEO of Fortune 100 company. And I sent all the right emails and I made all the right phone calls. And I asked somebody if they know the person, if they would, be willing to make an introduction for me. I've done all the things, I throw the pity party. Like, I've done everything. There's not a single other thing I can do. But when you're up against a wall and you have to do the thing, I will tell you, I have actually said, well, maybe I haven't tried calling the CEO directly and giving them this particular message. I haven't tried Googling their name and finding out exactly what's important to them and then spending 3 days coming up with exactly the 2 sentences that are going to make the difference for her and then relentlessly going out after her with this message. I will tell you, I had a meeting with the president of Revlon Global within 48 hours with this strategy of I give no F's. I need to make this happen. How can I make this happen? And all of a sudden you start thinking out of the box. And when you start thinking out of the box, that's when things start to happen. So the point of what I'm also trying to say here too, and I see some beautiful answers coming in on the chat, it's that we want to actually create this discipline for ourselves where we're thinking big and we're thinking out of the box without actually having to be stressed about it, right? Because my cortisol levels in those moments when I'm actually doing the thing with consequence, it's not pretty. Like that's when the ugly cry happens. That's when I'm snapping at my children. That's when I'm not the best wife, the best daughter, the best mother, right? But when I am my best is when I decide, you know what? I'm proactively going to get a meeting with the president of Revlon, and this is how I'm going to do it. And every day I'm going to take a small action because that's really important to me. My job is really important to me right now. And my brand at work is really important to me. So every day I'm going to spend 10 minutes making an action that moves me in that direction. Does that all make sense? Are you guys tracking with the way that I'm sort of thinking about?
Yes, those who will be viewing later on, I just want to read some of the replies from the chat. So as we were talking about the priorities, we have responses where people say they're looking for their passion project, right? How to do self-care so that they can achieve their passion project. Growth opportunities, working to grow their business or personal growth. Balancing compassion towards others, right? Emotional, physical, and cognitive. And also, families, right? Priorities as families.
Yeah. And I think a big theme and a big part of that, thank you for that, Anna, is this idea of thinking big, thinking bigger than ourselves, right? And trusting that things will happen for us because they should, because we deserve them, because we work hard for that. I think sometimes when we are in a box and we think that we need to do all of the things, we end up trying to your point, fit all these things in a box, but it doesn't quite feel right. Instead, when we actually pare it down and we start really focusing on 1 or 2 really big things that we want to make big moves on and really think big about what that goal is, I think it creates a lot more space for us to be able to realize that dream and be able to do more with what we have. And I think you'd be surprised at how much time it opens up for you to be able to do that project too.
Cool.
All right, so let's see. So here's how we're going to do this. So there's 5 steps, the way that I think about it, which makes it really easy. I think some of the great ideas here in chat, in my mind, I've really used this 5-step strategy to think about how do I surface the priorities that I have in my life. The first thing we're going to do, review your camera roll. It sounds very simple, but it's this idea of, I think we are so hard on ourselves that we do want to just be a mean girl to ourselves all the time, saying you're not good enough, you don't have enough time, you're not smart enough, you don't know, you're not qualified for that job, that promotion, you're never going to be able to do it, right? Like the list goes on and on. But what I encourage us all to do is to think about, let's go back to our camera roll and think about all of the things that we have done really successfully and all of the positive outcomes that we've had. We have to remind ourselves and celebrate all of the wins and all of the achievements that we have made, because I don't think that we do that enough. And that's step 1 in this process, is just telling ourselves the right story, because we are in this process. I think the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are truly dictate the people that we want to become. And if we're telling negative stories about the things that we've done, then we are going to create negative stories and outcomes for our future. But if we start to celebrate the little wins and we start to talk to ourselves a little bit more positively, right, then we're able to actually tackle all of those things with a little bit more grace. The second thing that we're going to do is prioritize the things that matter. And these are the things that are coming up for you all right now as you start thinking about what are some of the things that I really want to tackle. Is it that business that I want to launch? Is it that stage that I want to speak on? Is it the parent that I want to spend more time with, right? What are the priorities that are just eating away at you when you have that moment, that quiet moment with yourself, when you say, I want more time to do X? What is that thing that's coming up for you? Let's just get real about what that is. And then this idea of making your bare minimum list. So we're going to talk about like, how do you actually create the bare minimum? I don't even want you to do anything that's going to be a big lift, but just 5 minutes of something moving you towards that goal every single day, and figuring out how to create prioritization around that is going to be huge in terms of really shifting your priorities. And then we're going to start thinking about how we action the next 5 days. So creating momentum in something is not about making big moves. So I have a talk where I start thinking about, like, at the beginning of the year, how do we start creating plans to hit our quotas, right? I think that's a lot like hitting a New Year's resolution. People say they're going to make a resolution on January 1, and the statistic is that almost 67% of people fail on that resolution within 18 days. And within the first month, they actually decide that they're going to fail at that resolution enough that they give up before they ever even give it a shot. So imagine the power in that, right? Because what we're saying is, I have a plan and an idea that is so big and it's so great. It's going to change my whole life. I'm going to be the best version of myself. Oh, but guess what? I actually don't think I can do that. So I'm not even going to do it. No. The reason that that happens to most people is because they don't set the right habits in place to be able to do the thing on auto repeat. So it's going to be really important to set micro habits every single day so that you can actually start to create that habit. So if it's spending more time with your parent, for example, it starts with day 1, actually like making time to call your parents. On day 2, figuring out what day of the week you want to go spend a little bit more time with them. Day 3, right? Like building the habits and the building blocks so that it's not one big change at once, but it's teeny tiny little changes that we can habit stack and just make it a part of our normal routine. That's how we get to our goal. And then I'm a big believer in optimization of our spaces. I love to be in a beautiful place and space that's clutter free. I will tell you, like, this is the only box that looks pretty in my mind, because the rest of the house, I live with a husband, 2 boys, and a dog, and it's disgusting, every other space in my house. But it's really important for me to have the one space or the place, right, that I can actually make productive for me. And those are the things that actually help me think and help me feel like I'm making progress. And so I can actually, check out the rest of the world while I am in my space creating and being in a place that I can be a little bit more productive. So that is how we get to a place where we can start to feel better about the goals and the habits and how we tackle those things. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to put up, and I think after this, we might be able to send this to everybody because I want you all to have this. But I put together what I call the 5-day productivity reboot. And so if you have a piece of paper, I encourage you to just do this now and know that we're going to try to get this PDF out to you afterwards. But it is essentially the 5-day plan of how you start thinking about how to put this self-care in motion for yourself. So let me share my screen. You all can see this now?
No, it's coming up. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So you don't have to spend too much time here, but I do want everybody to just grab a piece of paper and a pencil and just start writing down sort of highlights, right? So when we start thinking about look at our camera roll, step 1 is all about playback. So I want you to just think a little bit about some of the things in the last 30 days or since January 1 that have gone really well for you. I think we're in a place where we can actually do that now with New Year's resolutions. If anybody set a goal for themselves and you're guilty of, oh, maybe I didn't actually do that thing, or maybe I, have abandoned this transformative idea I had for myself, whatever that is, see if you can tap into that and just see like, what am I really proud of? What went really well? And by the way, like I know some of you are hiding some really great things that you've done and some great habits and behaviors. So what did I accomplish that I'm actually maybe downplaying a little bit, but actually it's pretty darn cool? Because I want you guys to just keep that top of mind too. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that, just so you can start to write down some ideas. So exercise truly is about giving yourself the credit that you deserve and the grace that you deserve. And knowing that sometimes it's a little thing that actually makes you get momentum in a project, but you're ignoring the good thing that happens, right? So for the person who said in chat, I want to work on my passion project, I challenge that person to think about what is the beautiful thing that you have put in the world, or what is the Google search term that you Googled to get you one step closer? What is the book that you read that got you to your passion project? What is that inspiration you had? Write that down, because that is an important part of the goal and the thing that you want to accomplish when it comes to your passion project. And no thing is too small. I think it's just really important to make time to recognize those things, because that's how we build the habits.
Very true.
So now, okay, we shift a little bit and we go, okay, that's cool. We gave ourselves a high five, but like, actually, if I was really listening to that little voice in my gut that said, what's the one thing that every time I'm like, I really have to do that, and then I just shove it aside? What's that thing? Right? Like that's the thing you don't want to admit out loud. Or maybe that's the thing that's like, I ate a pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream and I'm supposed to lose 5 pounds this year, right? Like maybe that's the thing. I don't know what it is, but that's like your personal thing. That's why a lot of my talks, I always say this is a conversation with me, myself, and I, because this is private. You can share whatever you want, but let me tell you something, like accountability is the first step in all of this. And if you're not going to say it out loud and be accountable for yourself, you're not going to start to make progress. So I just encourage you on your own private piece of paper to think about, what's that thing that I really want to do, but I literally just keep avoiding. Okay. So it's important to recognize. Okay. And then over here for step 2, this is where we pull together all of the things that we might want to actually start to focus on. So for me, I think that I've categorized all the things that fall in these categories that are important, but there's also a space for other. So these are things for me that I have realized over the years have become blockers, or they've been propellers in terms of my productivity. So my morning routine, this is a huge one, because I do think that sometimes people like to have the right foundation when they start their day. I do an exercise with people called my average perfect day. And I encourage you to think about what your average perfect day is for Monday through Friday and what your average perfect day is for a Saturday, Sunday, right? But just think about, like, intentionally, how would you like to start that day? That's one piece of it. The other is your food, your health, your overall just health care, self-care. All of this is like meditation. Do you take the time to wash your face, or do you go to bed with your makeup on your face, right? Like I did that for a lot of years too, and now I've shifted my routine. So it's just all of the things that you think could kind of come into play for you. You guys can read this list. I don't need to go through every single one, but if there's one that jumps out at you, or if there's one that you've identified as your place to just get real, write down those things for yourself. And if it's other, just write down other. Because now what we want to do is what I want you to do is, on that piece of paper, write down 3 to 5 things that you think are the things that are important to you. And now I want you to assign a number to those things. Okay. So you've talked about the things that are important to you. You've talked about your passion projects, spending time with your parents, being a better empathetic friend to a person that you're potentially thinking of, or your neighbors, or whatever. So now what I want you to do is, from 1 to 5, I want you to assign a number to those things that you wrote down on your piece of paper. The number 1 is help. I need a lifeline. I really have no plan. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm failing miserably and it's not working. Whatever I'm doing is not working. And then 5 is like, I'm in my groove. I'm in my zone. Don't mess with me. I got this, right? And then 2 to 4, somewhere in the middle. So just assign that number, and that's what gives you a sense of where you might need a little bit more help or where you might need a lifeline. That all makes sense? And feel free to jump off of mute and share or chat or whatever you guys need to in this process.
All good so far?
Okay.
We have 10 minutes to our just reminding of the time.
Awesome. All right, good. So in this process now, what we want to do is, and again, I'll share all of this with you so that you have a way to kind of document everything, and you can revisit it monthly, you can revisit it, weekly. I think it's important to just kind of keep track of things as you go through the process. But as you go through your scores, the thing to kind of keep in mind is when you have just a few, it's easy to do all of them, but really you want to focus on the ones with the lowest numbers, because those are the places where you really can start to affect change. And what you want to do is just spend a few minutes thinking about, what actually did I do really, really well when it came to my health habits? What keeps getting in my way that I keep falling face first into that cheesecake? Like, why is that happening? Right? What do I need to improve to get into my rhythm? And just sort of figure that out for yourself and just take a moment to kind of problem solve that. And then the other thing that I think is so powerful, and I know we hear this all the time, ladies, and this is, again, not rocket science, but this is more just like the practical application of the things I hear, just like the things you hear in the world and why it should matter. So your why. People talk about you have to know your why, and we all know it's important, but sometimes we forget or we want to ignore it. I will tell you, I have a problem getting out of bed in the morning at, I don't know how you're doing this, Maria, but at 6 in the morning is usually my like wake up time, 6:30, sometimes 6:45, but like it's not my favorite time of day. And my youngest son is exactly the same as me. My oldest will wake up at 5 in the morning. He's ready to go. The shower's on. It's like life is happening. But my youngest has a real problem. Christian, time to wake up, time to go to school. He's like, just miserable. So a few months ago, he started waking up. And all of a sudden, I would hear the shower and I would say, oh, is it Johnny? No, it's Christian. Oh my gosh. And so one day, after 3 or 4 days of just this ongoing behavior, I stopped him and I said, Christian, I've been noticing that you've been getting out of bed really early. And I'm just really curious how you're doing that, because mama struggles with that too. Like, how are you doing that? And this 11-year-old boy looked at me and he said, well, I realized that I really want to have more time to read my book. And if I don't wake up early enough, then I don't have enough time to read my book. And so I tapped into my why. The why is that I want more time to read before I go to school. And that's why I wake up now. Okay. And so you can imagine I'm standing here listening to this feedback going, wow, this powerful habit that came from just tapping into your why. And it was such a gentle, simple reminder for me, because truly what he was saying is that if it matters to me and it's important enough, I will do it. And he was reading a book because he's a huge sci-fi fan and he's read all the Harry Potter books. And these are like massive books that he tackles. And he just doesn't have enough time in his day to read them. And he wanted more time in his day, right? So, oh, thank you, Denise. It's such a powerful concept, though, that we can all use in our lives, right? Like, you want to lose the 5 pounds? Why? You want to spend more time with mom? Why? You want to take time for your passion project? Why? Why? And ask yourself this over and over and over and over again until you come up with a reason that actually gives you the thing, and capture that and harness that and figure out how you're going to make that action. Okay, so that's the point of this, and that's the inspiration around this piece. Okay, so you go through this exercise for all the things, and then what you do in step 3 is now you start to get really deliberate, because let's get real, like things get in the way and we can't be perfect all the time, even though we try. So as you start thinking ahead to the next month or the next 6 weeks, let's say, Now let's capture some of the really big things that are going to get in your way, right? Do you have business travel? Do you have some really important meetings? Do you have some really yucky things that are just going to mess with your schedule and your time? Are you on kid duty every morning and it's going to be really hard for you to get out of bed and, do that meditation that you really want to do? Like, get real about some of the blockers that are in your life and start to think about, okay, how do I plan my day around these blockers that are happening? So you think about the blockers, you think about the big projects, because now you've carried over the important things that you want to do. And yes, pro tip, like, you want to actually carry over the things that are in this hot zone, like the 1, 2, 3 things that need help. And once you do that, in step 4, what you do is you start to take action on those things. So we're not going to get to everything, but now you can say, how do I take this priority that I have and how do I turn it into a commitment for myself? And what is the consequence if I don't actually hit that commitment, right? Because we talked early on about consequences, and we talked about when consequences are put on us by external factors, they're scary as hell, right? It's things like we're going to get fired. It's things like, we're not going to have a good health check at the doctor. Like, they're very scary things. But what is your consequence that you can assign to something before it gets to that external factor? So this is my commitment. This is the consequence if I don't do that thing. And how am I going to habit build day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, so that every day I'm doing a little thing. Okay. So when I think about this in the most general sense, my non-negotiables are drink water, move my body, be awesome. Sometimes it's really hard to drink water and move my body, but like, the reality is health is a priority for me. But there was a time when I was traveling a ton and I was all over and I just was stressed out at work and I just couldn't make that a priority and I couldn't make it to the gym. And I just thought that my whole entire routine had fallen apart. But this was literally that month. It was as simple as day 1, refill this water bottle 3 times every day. Day 2, eat more vegetables at dinner. Day 3, drive to the gym for the 8 a.m. class. Day 4. Okay, so we're stacking like tiny little habits, tiny habits on top of each other. But at the end of that 5 days, you've now habit stacked and you've created a cute little routine for yourself that you can get behind to get to the thing that you need to get done. Okay, so it's not rocket science. It's really, really simple baby steps, but it's a great way for you to just start to take control of the things that you feel like might be off the rails for you.
So I have a quick suggestion here. Raise hands if you're wearing smartwatches. Anybody from our participants is wearing smartwatch?
No.
Smartwatch. Okay, I see RP. I see Melanie. No, I interchangeably wear, but all of you, I'm pretty sure, are you do have smartphones, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I found that helps many of my clients and many of my friends when we're talking about this little habits to develop little habits is to put things into calendar, right? For example, the same thing as Tanya was mentioning, right? To fill the bottle 3 times a day, right? I have a friend who might drink a bottle of water once a week. So for her, it became a really health issue because then, it was something she grew up like that, but then over the time she realized she was having issues. So we were working kind of to help her to develop that habit to take at least half a glass of water a day, right? So that she could hydrate herself somehow. But anyway, so we put the recurring events for those habits, right? If you're getting in the morning, before you rush to pour that cup of coffee, right? Just take a sip of water, right? Happening every day, 8:30 a.m. When you know that you're gonna go run and take your cup of coffee, your phone will be just reminding you, drink sip of water before you sip the coffee. Right? Some for you, how to entertain yourself. So you put your own wording how to remind yourself of your little habits. It's really very helpful. Putting in the calendar as a recurring event, it's very helpful.
It's a great tip. And it's so good to drink water before your coffee. I never used to do that. I actually, for years, I feel like a little spoiled, but my husband would bring my coffee to my nightstand and do this to actually get me to smell the coffee. I mean, I'm the worst in the morning, really. But I've gotten in the habit now where I've read enough studies that you have to have, because coffee is dehydrating, you have to have water first. So now I put the water by my bedside and I chug the water and then I make my coffee. So that is, if you take nothing else away, drink water before your coffee. Reach out to this community if there's ever anything that you need. We're all here to support each other.
Great, even though we're at the hour, but I still want to give some 5-10 minutes to our participants to express their questions or comments. Anybody wants to ask a question?
I have
Yes,
a
sure.
question. I have a passion project and I'm pitching it out there and I get a lot of rejection. So how do you keep going when you believe in the project and it's a good project, but you're having a hard time getting people on board, or you're getting just a lot?
I think
That's
it's
a sales
good
question. That's all. That's you.
Rejection is the name of the game, sister. That means you're onto something. But it's a fair question, right? Because I think sometimes we want to, we want to give up because it just feels like the path of least resistance. But if you take it back to sales, truly, I mean, what they say about even just connecting with someone and communicating your idea, it takes a minimum of 10 to 15 outreaches to a prospect to get them to even consider listening to you. And do you know the statistic of when people actually start to give up? Any guesses?
No.
3 times. That's the max. People give up at 3 times. So there's a percentage of people, most people give up at 3 times, and a small percentage of people actually give up after 1 time. But the reality is it takes 10 to 15 times to communicate an idea, reach out to a person, and get a response. So that's just the sales statistic. So imagine when you're trying to motivate yourself for a passion project that you believe in wholeheartedly, that you want to sell to the world because it brings you joy and it lights you up in a way that nothing else does, but you're not able to create momentum. I think that's really hard, right? And so that's where it becomes critical for you to come up with an action plan of how do I define success? So I designed a sales planner that I use because I couldn't find any sales planners that I liked that actually kept track of my goals. And Marla, in this case, what I would do is I have one for my regular job, and then I use another one for my Work It Girl, my sales coaching job. And at the beginning of every week, what I do is I write down things that I want to accomplish and the things that I want to move. And then at the end of the week, it might not be I sold $1 million deal, but it might be I participated in, this webinar and I met a really great contact who said they would introduce me to such and such, and that is a win, right? So you have to find a way to create wins for yourself that keep you going. And in my journal, I basically do, like, on Monday, you're starting the week, and on Friday, you do a recap, and it forces you to write down the things that actually went really well that you're really proud of. And I think that's the way to do it, is to set your own goals and then create action to meet those goals. And then I promise you, at some point, the momentum is so strong that the universe starts putting things in front of you and you can't ignore the results that you start to get. Is that helpful?
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. Because, I think it's gotten to the point where I'm focusing too much on the negative of the project. And I'm actually not even noticing the positive and how far I've gotten with the project. So that's actually really good. Thank you. Yeah,
you're welcome. I mean, your brain really does believe what you tell it to believe. Like, truly, if you say I have not made progress and you're looking at the negative, your brain's going to be like, okay, cool, we're done here. But if you truly start focusing on the things that are going well, it's kind of amazing. Things just really start lighting up. They really do, because all of a sudden you're looking at things from a new perspective, and it's just, everything is inspired instead of like coming from a sad place. And I've literally just run my own personal experiments on my things, my business, my pipeline. And I truly have seen, you're going to laugh. Like, I couldn't get traction on my business at work. And so here I am. I wrote in an orange Sharpie because I bought a bright Sharpie. And I literally wrote all of the things. I said, this is like oversharing, but it's like, I have the support I need to crush the deals and accelerate my learning. I am a force. I booked a meeting with a brand new logo after just one meeting, one email outreach. And I know that it usually takes 10 to 15 times. I am amazing. I use it, right? Like, so it's just like writing down the thing that is the win for you and just keeping it right in front of you so that when I'm like, oh, my pipeline stinks and I'm not really doing the best job. And I don't know if I have the confidence to have that meeting with my manager this week. Guess what? I'm reading this before I get on the phone and I'm like, I did that. So I don't have a result, but I feel good and I filled my confidence bank. And if I can fill my confidence bank and curl my hair, I'm going to be a force no matter what happens.
Three questions were boundaries at work, and boundaries with friends.
Yeah. So it's a great question. I take on a lot. I do a lot in a day. And I think I underplay it, as I really do try to maximize a lot of my day, and I'm there for a lot of people and I support my friends and I still make time to be with my family and my friends and my parents. And I try to do a lot and I travel for work. So it's a hard question because I really don't have a lot of good boundaries. But I will say I'm also very, very low maintenance. So really the only boundary that I have that is a non-negotiable is every day I know I need a really good workout, and that is it. If I get that in, I know that that is the trigger for me for all the other things to go right. So if you need something from me, I will do it after I do my workout. If it doesn't interfere with that, and if I can get my time to do the thing, then I'm all yours. And I will really hardly ever say no to anyone about anything because I know what my non-negotiables are. And for me, it's get up every day and get a workout. Now, that means probably that needs to happen first thing in the morning or it's not going to happen, right? Because I get pulled in so many directions. So Melanie, no problem. Thank you so much. I know she has to sign off. But that I think would be my boundary. The other thing I would say is like you find the things that are important to you, right? Like if there's something that is just a thing you need to do for yourself every day, people know that about me. And so I think it's communicating that boundary to the people that you live with and making sure that they know. Or if something is amping up for the week, like my kids will know this week is a really bad week for me. I'm traveling. I have a lot of priorities at work. I have a lot of things I need to do. I might not be there for you the way that I like to be there for you, but everything will come back to normal the following week, right? So it's communication around those boundaries.
Yes, and that's very important. I agree with all your points, and especially the communication. Thank you so very much, Tanya, for this insightful and interactive session with us today. Follow up on AIWA and on the Facebook for AIWA Greater New York monthly online events. Sign up, participate, because we will be sharing a lot of great tools and techniques, and we're bringing great speakers to share their experience and their tools and tips. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the time, ladies. Thank you.